Okay, this year is in honor, as we mentioned, of Chavav, and 20th of Av, the Yartzeit of the Hilul of Rabbi Levi Yitzchak, the Rebbe's father, and this year 75 years. The shir deals with a commentary of Rabbi Levi on Masechta Midas. Masechta Midas is a Masechta which deals with the Midas, the measurements of the Beis HaMikdash. It deals specifically with this. If you can see this here, the Lishka Sa'etz, or later renamed Parhedrin, which we'll deal with, and this chamber, or suite, was the place where the Kohen Gadol lived for a week before Yom Kippur, in order to avoid contact with Tumah, and also to undergo intensive preparation and instruction for Yom Kippur. So let's begin our journey. Bilchas Beis HaBchira, Perek Aleph, Halacha Tes, says the Rambam, "Ve'ein boinin bei behechol v'azora eitz boilet klal." We don't build, in terms of the materials, in the Heichal. Heichal is the actual building that houses the Ulam and the Kodesh HaKadoshim. Or the Azora, the entire courtyard. He doesn't qualify that, so he means everywhere. Eitz boilet klal, any protruding wood at all. Eloi bavonim, either you build with stone, or belevenim, or with brick, besid, or cement. Ravid Makshal says that the Ravid asks and says, not so. We do. Kohen Gadol shall eitzaisa. The chamber, the suite of the Kohen Gadol was made of wood. Like we learned in Masechta Midas. One of the lishkas that surrounded the courtyard, or in the courtyard, was a lishka sa'etz, the chamber of wood. And that was the lishka of the Kohen Gadol. So he answered. He also asked another question. We do use wood, says the Ravid, on Sukkos. They made balconies for the women for Simchas Beis HaShoeva, and these balconies were erected in the Ezras Noshim. That's, by the way, the first time the first source of the separation of men and women, A, and B, separated in an upper gallery. So the Ravid himself answers as follows. The Rambam's statement, of course, is a Gemara, a Mishnah. What's the story behind it? Just to understand. The Torah prohibits planting. This is the Lashon HaPosuk. Leisita asheira eitz asarnes in the Sikha. Leisita asheira eitz al mizbach Hashem. It's an Isser to plant a tree, an asheira, which they worshipped, a kind of tree. It's a specific tree near the Mizbeach because it was an object of worship by the Knaanim. So the Chachamim were geyser not to have any tree, any wood, near the in the Beis HaMikdash complex. So the Ravid says that Isser is only Eitzel Mizbeach Hashem. It's only in the Mamish, in the courtyard. This Lishka, as we saw, was actually situated outside the courtyard. It was actually facing the Ezras Yisrael, the Israelite, or the courtyard. So, according to him, therefore, it's not a problem. It was made of wood, and they made balconies and sukkahs, because the Chatchila, the whole Issa, the whole prohibition is only Eitzel Mizbeach, which is the Ezras Koyanim. But the Rambam clearly doesn't subscribe to that, so we have to explain the Rambam. So, Yesh Mefarshim. No, you can give me a teres to the answer for the balconies, the achsadras that they made on sukkahs. That's an easy answer. It's not in the Sikha. It doesn't mean b'chaldim. It's only used on sukkahs. It's temporary. So since it's temporary, b'chaldim, it's not a problem.
It was only there for sukkahs.
Yeah.
The balconies in the women's section.
Yeah, no, but there's the hearing on.
What about the
Huh?
bima they used to make for hot
Again, likewise, temporary. That's, they're temporary, so they present no problem. But the shaila is the lishka sa'etz. So yesh meforashim, so some say, you can see in the order who they are. Kesef Mishnah and others. Shalishka sa'etz loy hoise b'noi be'etzim. It actually, and also the Tosfos Yom Tov, it wasn't actually built of wood. It was called that way from different reasons which they bring. For example, one of the reasons the Tosfos Yom Tov brings is because on one occasion it was used to store wood. So the name stuck, Lishkas Ha'etz, the chamber of wood. So the Rebbe says, it's a deichik to explain that. In addition to the fact, the reasons that they offer, why his chamber, his suite, should be called Lishkas Ha'etz. The Rebbe says, with all due respect, in my humble opinion, they don't really, Misyashvim means they don't really, literally settle. They don't settle well. No, it's a few many times in the Rebbe didn't say this lashon when he said this. When they write it up, that's how you write it. Whenever the Rebbe disagrees with anybody, like this, he would write it this way, which is the common way for all the Achronim to express themselves. The Ein Kan Mekoim, but the Rebbe said, I'm not going to go into. Now is not the place to go into all of their answers and why all of them are not satisfying. Harem Ashmois, beyond all of that, the meaning of Lishkas Ha'etz Bepashtus is, it's called the chamber of wood. Its simple meaning is, Shal Lishka B'nuya Me'etzer, it's made of wood. So how do we explain the Rambam, who, unlike the Ravid, holds that it's a issue that applies to the entire complex of the Beis HaMikdash? How is it that they had a chamber of wood?
But
Huh?
the question also, I'm just trying to understand, there's many of these chambers which were called because of what they represented, not because of the building.
Right. In fact, there was a Lishkas Ha'etz, which held the wood.
Yeah.
So but this is not a place to hold wood. If it was function was to hold the wood, we can call it Lishkas Ha'etz.
Why is it such a docha to say that they had the wood at a certain point? That's why they
No, there wasn't one.
To explain all the other information.
No, but I'm just telling what the shlog up here is because he shot the fellow in the middle. I tell you, I'm saying, get the. They answer because on one occasion it wasn't made for that. On one occasion there was wood in it, so from now on it's called Lishkas Ha'etz. You're saying if that's its function, in fact there was a lishka called Lishkas Ha'etz in the courtyard of the. Which is another question. There's two places called the same thing. So there wasn't
I missed the beginning, so this is a different Lishka, it's not the one that's called Lishka Ha'etz.
No. This is the that's called Lishkas Ha'etzim, which is another problem. The two places have the same name.
Especially with the comment.
And if there's a place called Lishkas Ha'etzim, which sounds more like it's holding wood, then this one sounds different. So
That's right. There's another thing. It doesn't sound like it was once a place that held wood, because it has a different language. Yeah. So the Rebbe answers a Pashat Teretz, which is in the words of the Rambam. Bemes. The Rambam actually prefaced and forewarned the problem with the precise language. What does he say? Quote, "Vein beinim by eight, beilet klal." You're not allowed to use protruding wood. So having wood in the structure, but if it's covered, it's no issue. Mavuba mefarshim, as the mefarshim say, this is Radvaz and others. Shall eitzim habniya vashikur shall eitz b'seich habinyan ein isud. Actually, to build and to sink in wood in the building infrastructure, there's no prohibition. The whole prohibition should be recognizable, and it makes sense. The whole reason that the Chacham made the Issa was why? Because of the Leisita Asherah, as we explained. So if it's not exposed, so there's no association, so no problem. It's a big chiddush takil. It's in the words of the Rambam. Boilet, that's the word boilet. By the way, the word boilet or blitus, we don't hear it too often, but it's a word in the Chabad lexicon. Someone does something. This chitzonius is one thing. Chitzonius is when it's superficial, external. But worse than that is blitus, which means to expose, kind of to get attention. He does something that should be noticed by others, so that's a big no-no. Blitus, the opposite of hatzni leches, of being discreet. What's that?
You want to hear?
The Makkah of the Rambam, when we say the Rosh Hashanah, there the Gemara Rosh Hashanah contrasts the Beis Hamikdash built by Shlomo Melech and the Beis Hamikdash that was built by Darius. This is after the story of Purim. The permission had begun, and then it stopped and started, and finally get permission again. So Darius, the Gemara contrasts and says, it doesn't quote the whole Gemara here, but that's the context here. What does it say in the pasuk? Because what the Gemara says like this: that Darius used wood. Darius used wood in the construction, and the Gemara is critical of that. But the Gemara asks, "But so did Shlomo Melech." Hachotzer Apnimis quote here. Hachotzer Apnimis, the inner courtyard. That's Ezes Kohanim, in the brackets. Ezes Kohanim and Ezes Yisrael. Says the pasuk Shloisha Turei Gozis, 3 rows of cut wood, V'tur Krosis Arozim, and then another row of cut cedar wood. So he used wood. Why is the Gemara? So the Gemara is asking. So did Shlomo Melech, and the reason they're critical of Darius is because if the Jews would rebel, it'd be easier to destroy it because it's got wood. They didn't want it made of stone, but Shlomo also made it of stone. So the Gemara gives 3 differences. Number 1, Shlomo Melech sank it in the building, and he covered it with cement. In contrast to Darius, so we see that to have wood but covered is absolutely permissible. Here he made that the wood should not be protruding. So this is a support for the Rebbe's answer in explaining the Rambam that it is what? It was covered. So it's beseder. Now the footnotes deal with, they won't go into barichas, but if you remember, in the study of the Beis Hamikdash, outside the Heichal, I spoke about it. No, you guys, it was a shir, it's online. I don't think we talked about it. Shall I should this now? On top of the entrance to the Heichal, which was completely open. No, I spoke about it Shabbos morning. Yeah, I did. Remember? So there are 5 cedar beams. 22 amas, 24, 26, 28, and 30. And that's in the Heichal Mamash. So the footnote you did deals with it. The Mefarshim do. That's ornamental. That was like attached. They had the brick, and the bricks in between it was attached on top. That's not considered building. Similar to the temporary achsadrias. Just telling you the terets. That's not considered as building. But here, this is part of the infrastructure. This lishka sa'etz. So the Rebbe's answer is that what? That it is covered. Pisa yeshloima. David, sit at the table. Easy to hear. No? Page Kuf Ayin Aleph. Bepashtus. Shalom lishka sa'etz hoysa b'nei meit. It was talking built of wood. Umikol mokim lo yebezesham misl. There's no prohibition. Ki shoko sa'etz. They sunk it. V'seidu b'sid and covered it with cement or mortar. Shelo ye'etz boiler that should not be protruding. Good. So we've answered the Rambam. Base. Omdam adayin tzarich lo mislaf the answer. Tam. This explanation maspik is sufficient. Rak levayed only to explain why it's permissible to make it of wood since it was not exposed. But the obvious question, what compelled them? At the outset, Livnei says to make it of wood. And in brackets, and cover it with cement. Why wouldn't they have built it from stone, or bricks? Like all the other chambers in the complex of the Beis Hamikdash. But Tosfos Yom Tov Mevai, the Tosfos Yom Tov explains, he's the one also that suggests in explaining the Rambam that it was covered. He's one of the sources for that. So he explains, the reason that they did this was similar to what the Gemara explains as follows. Why did they build the suite where they built it? For example, let me show you. The suite, the lishka is here. The mikveh, for example, that he used, this is exclusive for the Kohen Gadol, was built on the second floor of this building here. It's a tremendous distance. And the avodah which he did is here in the Kodesh Kadoshim. Why wouldn't not efficient? Why wouldn't they build his chamber close to where all avodah is, where the mikveh is, and where the whole adjacent, parallel, somewhere here or here, adjacent to the heichal. So the Gemara says, because the reason the lishkas were built, that it caused this extra effort, to go in the avodah of the Kohen Gadol Kippur leleches holich v'chas, to go back and forth midorim letzofen mitzofen ledorim, right and left, from south to north and north to south, the mikvos in the south, for example, kedei shlei tazuach daite olav. It was literal translation. His mind tazuach shouldn't become too comfortable, too in other words, arrogance. He shouldn't take his position and become prideful, and that is an undesirable trait. In Rashi, he should not take pride with the crown of priesthood. That is a binyan. So that's why that says the Tosfos Yom Tov. It's another thing they did in order to humble him. So what did they do? They didn't make it out of the beautiful, gorgeous Jerusalem stone like everything else. It wasn't made like everything else, but with wood. But then you can't have it with exposed wood, so they covered it. So it was to make a very humble abode. That's the teretz of the Tosfos Yom Tov.
I don't want to chas v'shalom, whatever, but it's kind of it's covered anyways. You don't know, like there's nothing.
It clearly doesn't look the same. Covering it with cement doesn't look the same as stone. So it was anyway. It was called Lishkas Ha'etz. It had a name. He's going to Lishkas Ha'etz.
They covered the mizbeach also.
Huh?
They covered the mizbeach also. It's not the Rabbi like a bad thing.
So there's a reason for it there. In fact, it's a mila because it's earth, and you're covering it with copper, which is an elevated.
No, the mizbeach fits on it.
No, I'm sorry. That was made of stone. That was made of stone. This beich hachitzon.
Covered with seed also. That's the plaster.
It was covered with seeds, so to mitzat tumba problems and other things. Also, there was a copper covering. There's also a copper covering on top of it. Akoponim,
And if it's so derogatory, they wouldn't put it on top of the echad.
They wouldn't what?
Decoration.
They wouldn't?
Put it on top of the entrance of the echad. The 5 beams. Saying if it's such a
That was actually decorative.
It looks like
Those
nice.
wooden beams were decorative.
The
So if they were,
decoration is nice, but as structure, it's not a good.
but the basic idea is that everything else is made of what? Of stone. Your lishka we're making of wood, and we're going to cover it. So there's a reason for this change, and what's the reason? It's not an upgrade; it's a downgrade. The fact that it had to be changed. Wood can be beautiful, but here we're changing it dafka, and we're not exposing it; we're covering it. But the Rebbe has another problem. This explanation isn't satisfactory. Look at Ahara 19. Actually, your point. It was covered anyway. That's maybe your question. What does it mean accomplished? It's anyway being covered. So aside from that, even though we have to assure that the Kohen Gadol should not get carried away with his position, it doesn't. It's not logical. They should be mahadir in the matter. Now this Hiddur is expressing a big fear, that the Kohen Gadol, it would not be appropriate. You have to make such a big, so much so, not only we have to the location of it, but then the actual construction materials have to be such, we have to go to such extent.
We do it on sutras, when you pour the water.
Yeah, because that was the real shad of the Tzedukim. But every Kohen Gadol, we're being choshesh, he's about gaiva, and he's not appropriate. It's insulting. Here, the night before Yom Kippur, the Mishnah tells us that the Sanhedrin would make the Kohen Gadol swear. This is what you're talking about by the Tzdukim. He shouldn't change. What was the whole change? The big change was bringing the Ketores in Kodesh HaKadoshim. The Tzdukim said, let's start the other way. The Kohen Gadol comes in with, it's a whole Avodah there. He comes in holding in his teeth the spoon with the Ketores, which we talk about every single day, twice a day. How it was ground and double ground out of Yom Kippur. And his other hand, he has the fire pan, and he has to tip the Ketores into his hand, Malay Chafnov, and then put it onto the fire pan. It's a tremendous avodah, which is part of the reason you have to undergo this whole hachana for a week before. You can't spill a drop. You only had exactly malei chafnov and a double portion of 2 palms, and all of it had to be placed on the burning coals, which was placed then on the aron, between the two. Placed before, not on the aron, before the aron, between the staves, between the badim. Anyway, so that's the avodah. The Stukim said, is that how you? That's when you serve a king. You actually, nowadays in restaurants they do it. They bring they cook it in front of you, but derech kavod is it's cooked in the kitchen and it's brought ready. So they would light it, and no one could see what he's doing, because he's in the kodesh doing this. So they would light it before and bring it in already. The ketores already burning. So they would make him swear that towards the end of the second Beis Hamikdash, when the Tzdukim, or even earlier, when the Tzdukim were having a presence, so they made him swear. So the Mishnah says that after they did Hayapreshin of Beichin, the Bezdin would turn away and cry. Al shechashdu, that they had to make him, and he would cry that he was being held under suspicion, that he had to swear that he's not going to change. The point being is this is not a desirable thing. So we're going to go this far. We make him swear. We built his lishka all the way over here because we want to avoid gaiva. On top of that, now another thing. We're going to change the construction and cover it not to violate the Isser. That's going too far. Or befrat, and especially, especially it's a problem that what are we saying here in addition? Do we want to assure that he shouldn't be get carried away? The Rebbe is spelling out the question that we cause him, to walk back and forth. So would we have to go this far? That in addition to that, the 7-day separation, being separated 7 days is also part of his humbling and preparation. Should they also add, Rashi says, we change a year round. To make a build of wood? Question mark, exclamation mark. So the Rebbe therefore is not satisfied with this answer to say that why did they do it? Why did they make it of wood? In order to ensure his humility. That's already been taken care of by the fact that the very location of it, and that's why he's there for 7 days before. The whole thing is not desirable. So why would we be mahaded and add something and change a din for year round in the Beis Hamikdash and then compromise it by covering it? Now, the words from the Bleivik, there's actually two places the Rebbe quotes him here. Here's the first one. Amur, that stands for, of course, Ovi, Adoni, Meiri, Verebi. Kosev writes about Rosh Masechta Midas in his notes on Masechta Midas. Like this, Lishkas Kohen Gadol Nikras Lishkas Ha'etz. The chamber of the Kohen Gadol was called the chamber of wood. Rak kol zman sha'kohenim gedolim hayakshenim v'tzadikim. Only as long as the kohenim gedolim were right, kosher and tzadikim. What does the word kosher mean? Anybody? We use it all the time.
Kosher?
It's literal translation. Kosher, fit. Yeah, appropriate, fit. So it means kosher. It's appropriate and fitting for consumption, to use as a mitzvah, whatever the case may be. So only when they were appropriate in tzaddikim, she'erichu yomim, and they had long life, Shimon HaTzadik, like for example Shimon HaTzadik. So that's why, and he's going to explain in a minute, the association with wood, the association with long life. So that's when it was called Lishkas Ha'etz. Aval lo la'achri Shimon HaTzadik. But after Shimon HaTzadik quoted in Pirkei Avos, after he died, Shinu es Hashem shel Lishkas Kohen Gadol. That's when they changed it, and it became called Lishkas Parhedrin, the chamber of the Parhedrin. We actually find that change. In Masechta Midas, it's called Lishkas Ha'etz. Lishkas Ha'etz. In Masechta Yuma, which describes the avodah of the Kohen Gadol, then we find it's called Lishkas Parhedrin. Why was it changed? So he explains here from the Gemara. Parhedrin is a Greek word, and it means the king's officer. Kenoisim olav mammon, the kahuna, because at the end of the second base there was corruption, and the kohenim gedolim would give money to get this position. Umachlifin oisa kol shneim oser chodesh, and they would be exchanged every year. Often, why? Because they died. Kepahedrin halolo, like these officers of the king, shmachlifim oisam kol shnei masa chodesh, they were changed every year. Presumably, the king doesn't want people that are very close in power, they shouldn't get comfortable. They changed every year. This is to keep everybody at bay. So every year there was what? Another Kohen Gadol, and therefore the name changed to a sad commentary on the times that the chamber of the Lishka of the Kohen Gadol is now called Parhedrin. Now, why was it called Eitz before? So my father, the Rabbi explains, She'etz moed al harichas yomim. Eitz, a tree, is a symbol of long life. It's one of the nevuos of ZT'L, and the pasuk is describing how we'll live in tranquility and we will plant and nobody will seize it, and so on. And then he says, Kimeya eitz yimeya mi, like the days of a tree will be the days of my people. So it's the symbol of longevity. That's why when they were kosher, the Kohen Gadol, their suite was called the chamber of wood, because it's reflective of what they were, which were tzaddikim and lived long lives. Actually bringing out their maila, their virtue. I just want to point out that many Mistami know this, that the trees are the longest living entity, organism in existence is a tree. And the oldest trees in the world, we all know, are the ones in California. And they've been cut, at least in the 30s and the 20s, and they're used for timber. Now the government has protected them, but at one time was a source of timber. And we all know that every year, there's also part Baruchnis, we'll see Ba'aveda, that every year the tree adds a ring. And guess how old are these trees are? 6,000 years. So in terms of hardcore evidence, and not extrapolation or what's what I'm looking for? Not anecdotal, but extrapolation. Evidence it's not anecdotal. That's based on certain assumptions, theories. In terms of hardcore evidence, the world is as old as the Torah says it is. There's nothing hardcore that indicates otherwise. The theory is carbon dating, which is based on certain givens which are unprovable. Such a word, unprovable, cannot be proven. Like the amount of radioactivity in the air. Famous letter of the Rebbe, which you haven't read it, you should. famous letter addressing the two of them, addressing evolution. The Rebbe makes this point. The whole carbon dating is based on an assumption that cannot be proven. In other words, at the outset of creation, there was an explosion of radioactive intensity. The whole carbon dating is completely off by hundreds of millions or billions of years. But the hardcore, every year that it adds a ring, is the tree. So all to say, so why the LEVI is saying there's a good reason to call it Lishkas Ha'etz, because Lishkas Ha'etz is longevity. And number one, it shows their personal schus that the Kohen Gadol continue to serve year after year. But moreover, and the Rabbi Levi adds further, the Kohen Gadol shaykh larichas yomim. The Kohen Gadol himself embodies the union of long life, because long life, of course, is rooted in the right. What's the right? Chesed. As the pasuk says, "Oirech yomim b'yamina." Long life at its right. When do we say that? Hagbeh. B'chinas chesed. And the Kohen Gadol, b'chinas chesed. Kohen Gadol, we learned this in the previous Maimer, that Kohen is chesed, Levi is gvurim, elamata l'mayla. Bina has the two inyonim, we learned. Remember? Barichas. There's the Kohen property and the Levi property of Bina. At any rate. So the Kohen is the union of chesed. Now what's the raya? You tell me, Rabbi, don't look further. What's the raya pashat from Chumash and the pashat the din that we had recently in the Chumash, that the Kohen Gadol is connected with Arichas Yomim? You already read forward, but you would have guessed it anyway.
I don't think I would.
A big din, a famous din we had in Parshas Matas. The Kohen Gadol, exclusive Kohen Gadol Arichas Yomim. All right, let's see it inside. For Meiverai Mishin Yonash Kohen Gadol Arichas Yomim, he brings the raya of the association of the Kohen Gadol with long life in Maimer Azal, from what Chazal said. Rashi brings it in the Chumash. Benegei lohirik nefesh b'shgoga. Someone who kills inadvertently, shedinei shalei lotzis meir miklati, he has to remain in the Ari Miklat till when? Ad Mois HaKohen Gadol, till the Kohen Gadol dies. Why? Here's the quote: Ritzeach mekatze yom shel adam. He shortened a man's life. The Kohen Gadol meirich yom shel adam, and the Kohen Gadol he brings down Hashem's bracha, and he brings longevity. Ein bedin, it's not appropriate. Sheimish mekatze yom shel adam. Someone that has shortened a man's life, that he should be around, if they mishim meirich yom shel adam, should be walking around, sharing the same space, as it were, with someone who lengthens life. Therefore, he remains there till the Kohen Gadol dies. So we see further, Pashat from Mahalacha, that Kohen Gadol is associated with what Arichas Yomim. So calling it Lishkas Ha'etz is very appropriate. A, it conveys the Kohen Gadol is a tzaddik. B, his whole union is to bring down Baruch of Arichas Yomim.
It switches a lot of things right now. That Eitz is a Maila.
Yeah, right now we're a bit confused. Eitz is a Maila.
Why is it forbidden then?
He's going to ask that question. If it's a Maila, it should be exposed. If it's a Maila, it should be, the din should be that you build everything of wood, of stone, but this should be Eitz because of its Maila. It's the Rebbe's Kash.
And then you have a question, well, not a question, but then that would explain why the rest of the Bet HaMikdash is built of stone, because it's not longevity. It wasn't made to build forever. No? Maybe because it was supposed to be destroyed and it's not.
Well, this case was also destroyed.
Yeah.
The only thing it was a Kodesh HaKadosh. I'm not sure if that's the implication. It's not, the other thing is not, but this is yes. But let's go a little bit further. Veshloima. The Rebbe suggests that what Rabbi Levi adds as a proof. Shezeu in Yonish Shel Kohen Gadol, that this is what he's all about. Meirich Yom Shel Adam. He's adding a nuance to the question why it was made of eight. Not only because it's symbolic of a long life for him, tzaddik, but he gam himself a betirus hashel, and it also adds to answer the question betam shalishkas eitz, why it was built of wood. It's not only to hint to his own personal standing, to hint, in the name wood, conveying the long life of the tzaddikim of the original generation, shel hakohanim hagdolim shel tzaddikim, of those who were righteous. And then they changed the name because they weren't. It's not only about him. But to stress, this is what a Kohen Gadol is. I'm not just contrasting these righteous ones with the later non-righteous. But this is what a Kohen Gadol is at all times. Whether even irrespective of whether he personally lives a long life or not, his inyan is arichas yomim. That's what he embodies, whether he himself achieves it or not. So it's a further explanation as to the appropriateness of him being where in a chamber made of wood. Just like the din vayeshev ad meisa Kohen Gadol, that the one who kills b'shogeg has to be there till the Kohen Gadol dies. It's irrespective whether the Kohen Gadol lives long or not. It's because he's the symbol of a long life. So it's stronger that the calling it Lishka Eitz is not just a statement about an individual Kohen Gadol who lived long, but it's a statement about what the Kohen Gadol is. The Kohen Gadol altogether, this whole position is a position of arichas yamim. That's why it's made of wood. Now the question is going to be, good. So Levi explained why it's called Lishkas Ha'etz. Because the bottom line is that's exactly what he's all about. Not only is it a reflection of the Kohenim Gedolim who were tzaddikim, but at all times it's the union of Arichas Yomim. Now it's going to come the question, why wouldn't the din be that they should be exposed? It should be the exception. And that we'll deal with Mitzvah Shem tomorrow. The answer, my dear friends, is beautiful.
Let's go back, I guess I missed it. Where's this issue of having